State Women's Prison, May 2025. Gray concrete and metal bars were the last things Megan Hill, 38, wanted to remember about this place. For 9 years, 3,287 days, she had woken up to the sound of the prison bell. Today, that bell rang for her for the last time. "Hill, get out. Your things are packed." The guard tapped her baton on the metal door. Megan folded her thin blanket into a neat rectangle, a habit that would now stay with her forever. In a small plastic bag was all that remained of her former life. Worn jeans, a faded blouse that now hung loosely on her thin frame, and the wedding ring she had taken off the day she was arrested. "Ready to go back out there?" asked Janet, one of the few guards who treated the inmates like human beings. "I don't know," Megan replied honestly, running her hand through her short hair, which had grown only a couple of inches since her last haircut. "A lot has changed. But you're strong. You'll be fine," Janet nodded, walking her down the familiar corridor for the last time. The release procedure was a blur, signing papers, receiving instructions, getting her personal belongings back, including her old smartphone, which now seemed like an ancient artifact. And then the glass doors slid open, releasing her into freedom. The bright spring light made Megan squint. Bus station, same day. The first bus to Pine Ridge was leaving in an hour. Megan bought a ticket with money she had saved from odd jobs in prison. Sitting on a plastic seat in the half-empty waiting room, she checked her email for the first time in a long time. One new message, from Daniel, sent yesterday. "Megan, I know you're coming back tomorrow. We need to talk, but not right away. Let me know when you're ready. There are things I need to explain to you in person. Know I missed you, or welcome home." And what did not right away mean? Megan felt her fingers dial the number she knew by heart. Rings, 4, 5, voicemail. "Daniel, it's me. I'll be in town by 5. I think 9 years is long enough for not right away to pass." Pine Ridge, evening Pine Ridge, looked almost the same as she remembered it. A small town in the shadow of the mountains, where everyone knew each other and everything was decided at Dottie's Cafe on Main Street. The bus stopped at the gas station at the edge of town. "Megan? Megan Hill?" A familiar voice made her turn around. Fred Parker, the owner of the only taxi in town, waved at her. He had aged, but his smile remained the same. "I thought it was you." "Welcome home, girl," he said without judgment, which surprised Megan. "Need a ride?" "To the house on Cedar Street," she replied, getting into the back seat. "To..." Fred faltered, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "To the Hill house? Yes, that's still my home, isn't it?" A cold feeling began to spread through Megan's chest. Fred looked away. "Of course it is. It's just, you haven't been in touch with your family for a long time, have you?" Daniel wrote regularly for the first few years, then less often. Lizzy sent drawings every month, she said of her 16-year-old daughter, who was only 7 when Megan was arrested. "Why?" "Nothing," Fred replied too quickly. "Here we are." The 2-story house with a white fence looked well kept. Fresh paint, a trimmed lawn. 2 cars were parked in the driveway, Daniel's old pickup truck and a shiny blue sedan that Megan didn't recognize. She paid Fred and, clutching the plastic bag with her things, headed for the house. The front door opened before she had a chance to knock. Standing in the doorway was her younger sister Emily, older but still beautiful, her eyes wide with shock. "Megan, we weren't expecting you so early." She glanced behind Megan, as if looking for a way to escape. "Where's Daniel? Where's Lizzy?" Megan stepped forward and Emily awkwardly stepped back, letting her into the house. Inside, everything had changed. New furniture, different colors, photos on the walls. Megan froze, staring at the large family photo above the fireplace. Daniel, Lizzy, almost grown up, and Emily. All 3 were smiling like a real family. "What is this?" Megan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Megan, listen," Emily began, but she was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. "Emily? Who's there?" Daniel froze in the middle of the stairs when he saw his ex-wife. He had changed. There was gray hair at his temples and wrinkles around his eyes, but it was still the same Daniel she had spent 9 years of her life with. "Hi, Daniel," Megan said, feeling every word scratch her throat. "I'm home." Megan. He slowly descended the stairs, never taking his eyes off her. We were going to meet you, tomorrow, to organize everything. Arrange what? Rehearse how you're going to explain that my sister is living in my house with my husband? Technically, I'm not. We got divorced 5 years ago, Megan. You signed the papers. She remembered those papers. She thought they were some kind of documents to re-register the house to protect the property. Daniel said it would be better for Lizzy. What about the engagement ring on Emily's finger? Is that also to protect the property? Megan turned to her sister. How long did you wait before you got into my bed? A week after I was arrested? A month? 3 years, actually, Emily replied quietly. We didn't plan it. I helped with Lizzy, came over every day. Where's my daughter? Megan interrupted. At school camp. She'll be back in 2 weeks, Daniel replied. Megan, we need to talk, like adults. Like adults? I spent 9 years in prison for a crime you committed. 9 years, Daniel. And all this time you... The sound of a car pulling up interrupted her. Through the window, Megan saw a police car with the Pine Ridge Sheriff's badge. You called the police? Seriously? Megan felt her insides go cold. No, Daniel and Emily exclaimed in unison. The door swung open, and Sheriff Robert Carson appeared in the doorway, an old friend of Megan's father, now completely gray but with the same piercing gaze. Rob? What's going on? Daniel asked, a hint of fear in his voice. Daniel, the sheriff nodded, then noticed Megan. Good heavens, Megan Hill, I didn't know you were back. Today, she replied curtly. What brought you here, Sheriff? Emily asked insistently. Sheriff Carson shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. Actually, I'm here to see Daniel. We need to talk about the letters. Letters? Megan looked at her ex-husband. Daniel turned pale. Can we discuss this later, Rob? I'm afraid not. A new one arrived today, with photos of your house, your car, and a detailed description of your daily routine, and signed justice will be served soon, the sheriff said, taking out a plastic bag containing the letter. We have to treat this as a real threat. Megan watched the scene as an outside observer. Daniel was receiving threats? From whom? When did the first letter arrive? She asked, surprised at her own calm tone. 3 weeks ago, the sheriff replied, looking at her intently. Right after your early release was announced. A heavy silence fell. Emily grabbed Daniel's hand. The sheriff shifted his gaze from one face to the other. You think it's me? Megan shook her head in disbelief. Seriously? Megan, no one is saying, Daniel began. No, that's exactly what you're saying. I just got out of prison where I served time for you, and the first thing I hear is accusations of threats? Megan, Sheriff Carson's voice became official. Where have you been for the last 3 weeks? In prison, damn it! Check the records! Your early release was approved a month ago. You could have gotten out sooner. I was waiting for confirmation of a spot in the rehabilitation program. It only came last week. Megan felt anger rising inside her. Call the jail and check if you don't believe me. The sheriff nodded. I'll check. In the meantime, any ideas who might be threatening your ex-husband? Ex? Megan repeated bitterly. Let me think. Maybe someone he cheated out of money with his financial schemes? Someone whose money he stole and then framed his wife to take the fall for? There could be a lot of people like that. Megan, Daniel's voice took on a pleading tone. We can talk about this. I'll explain. Oh, I'm sure you will, she said, turning to the sheriff. I think I need to find another place to stay. This is obviously not my home anymore. The old McIntyre Motel is still open, but... The sheriff began. No, Emily said firmly. You can stay in the guest room. It's still your home, too. Daniel glanced at his wife in surprise. Fine, Megan replied coldly. Sheriff, do you mind if I look around? It seems like a lot has changed in 9 years. Sheriff Carson nodded. Just don't leave town anytime soon, Megan. I'll have more questions. When the sheriff closed the door behind him, a heavy silence fell over the house. Where are my things? Megan asked, looking at Daniel. In the garage. We kept everything, Emily replied quickly. And my documents? My financial papers? The things that were in the safe? Daniel and Emily exchanged glances. In my office, Daniel finally replied. Megan, we really need to talk. About that case. About Leonard Morgan. Megan raised her hand to stop him. Not now. I want to take a shower and sleep in a normal bed. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll talk about how you let me rot in prison while you built a new family with my sister. She headed for the stairs, but stopped on the first step. And Daniel, I hope whoever's been writing you letters is just trying to scare you. Because if I wanted revenge, letters would be the last thing I'd use. The Hill House, the next morning. Megan woke up to the sound of footsteps and muffled voices outside her door. The guest room, formerly Daniel's study, had been tastefully redecorated but lacked personality. It was like a room in a nice hotel. We can't just leave it like this. Emily's voice was tense. She has a right to know. Know what? Megan threw open the door, making Emily flinch. Her sister was holding a tray with breakfast. God, you scared me, Emily tried to smile. I brought you breakfast. Thanks. Megan took the tray but didn't step back. What do I have a right to know, Emily? Emily hesitated. Daniel left early this morning. He said he had a meeting with Leonard. With Morgan? Why? I don't know. He doesn't tell me about his work. Emily lowered her eyes. Megan, I understand that you hate me. I don't hate you, Emily. Megan sighed, feeling tired despite 10 hours of sleep. I just don't know who you are anymore. In the heavy silence, Megan returned to the room, set down the tray, and changed into clean clothes she had found yesterday in boxes in the garage. The old jeans hung loosely on her, but the blue blouse, once her favorite, still fit well. I'm going into town, she announced as she descended the stairs. The sheriff said, Emily began, I'm not leaving Pine Ridge. I just want to see what's changed. Main Street in Pine Ridge, Noon Pine Ridge, remained a small town where all the main establishments were located on one street. A grocery store, a pharmacy, a bank, Dottie's Cafe, the library, and Morgan's sawmill on the outskirts. Megan walked down familiar streets, catching glances. Curious, surprised, judgmental. A small town never forgets and rarely forgives. Megan Hill, I can't believe my eyes. A familiar voice made her turn around. Standing in front of her was Leonard Morgan, a tall man with a shock of gray hair and deep wrinkles around his eyes. Daniel's former business partner looked old and tired. Mr. Morgan? Megan nodded. I heard you saw Daniel today. I saw his back as he ran away. Leonard grunted. Come into the cafe, I'll buy you a cup of real coffee. I'm sure you missed it. Dottie's Cafe hadn't changed. Same checkered tablecloths, same photos on the walls. Dottie, now completely gray-haired, brought them their coffee herself. Welcome home, girl. She squeezed Megan's shoulder and left them alone. So Daniel ran away from you? Why? Megan sipped her coffee, enjoying the long-forgotten taste. Leonard hesitated. Because he's afraid I'll tell you the truth, the whole truth. About the investment scheme? I know he took money from clients and didn't invest it where he said he would. That's just the tip of the iceberg, Megan. Leonard leaned forward. What exactly did he say to you before he was arrested? Flashback, 9 years ago, Megan. I've ruined everything. Daniel sat on the edge of their bed, his head down. The fund. There are problems with the accounting, big problems. What kind of problems? Megan sat down next to him. I didn't use the investors' money as I promised. Several projects failed, and I tried to make up for the losses. I moved funds around. You stole money? Megan felt her stomach clench. No, I just borrowed it for a short time. But now there's going to be an audit, and I'll go to jail, Megan, for many years. Daniel took her hands. But there's a way out. If you sign a confession, you were officially the financial director. On paper, you had access to all the accounts. You have no criminal record. You'll get no more than 3 or 4 years. And if I refuse, then we'll both go to prison. Who will take care of Lizzy, the foster care system, an orphanage? What if you confess? Megan, I'm looking at a minimum of 15 years. 15. By the time I get out, Lizzy will be an adult. We'll lose everything. Megan was silent for a long time, looking at her 7-year-old daughter sleeping in the next room. Okay, she finally said. I'll do it, for Lizzy. Dottie's Cafe, present day. He said I'd get 3 or 4 years, Megan said, looking out the window, remembering. In the end, it was 9. Because he lied about the scale, Leonard frowned. It wasn't just bad investments. Daniel created a completely fictitious investment fund. The money came in, The reports showed growth, but in reality, most of the funds disappeared. Like a Ponzi scheme? Megan felt a chill inside. Exactly. He paid old investors with money from new ones, and in the end, he transferred a large sum to offshore accounts. The fictitious bankruptcy was supposed to cover his tracks. And you knew? Leonard lowered his gaze. No, but I should have guessed. I trusted him with the sawmill's finances. When the case came to light, I lost almost everything. I barely saved the business. Why didn't you tell the police the truth? Megan clenched her cup so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Because he framed me too. According to the documents, I was an accomplice. He threatened that if I talked, he would take me down with him. Megan leaned back in her chair. And now, 9 years later, you've decided to share? Why? Because he's back at it again, Leonard replied quietly, looking around. Daniel started a new investment fund 2 years ago. He's using a different name, different partners, but it's the same scheme. How do you know? One of my old friends almost invested. I recognized the handwriting and warned him, Leonard sighed. And 2 weeks ago, Daniel offered me compensation for my old losses if I became a partner in the new venture. And you refused. Of course. And the next day, Daniel received the first threatening letter. Leonard frowned. The sheriff suspects you, but I think it's one of the new investors who realized he was being cheated. Megan pondered what she had heard. Where's the evidence? Anything that can be used against Daniel? It's complicated. All the documents that could incriminate him disappeared during the investigation. Or were in my house, Megan finished for him. In the safe. Daniel said that backup copies of documents that could be misinterpreted were kept there. And you never checked. No, I trusted him, Megan said bitterly. Leonard lowered his voice. Those documents could change everything. Prove your innocence, expose his scheme. If they still exist, Megan finished her coffee. Thanks for the information, Mr. Morgan. I have to go. Be careful, Megan. Daniel isn't the man you knew. Sheriff's office, afternoon Sheriff Carson was studying a new letter when Megan knocked on the open door. Megan, come in. He put the letter in a folder. What can I do for you? I wanted to know if you checked my alibi, about the letters. I did. You were in jail when the first letter arrived. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. Sorry for suspecting you. Don't apologize. It's your job. Megan sat down across from him. Can I see the letters? The sheriff hesitated. Why? Because I know Daniel, and I may know who would threaten him. After a pause, the sheriff slid the folder toward her. Megan looked through the 3 letters, all printed, unsigned. Short threats, photos of Daniel's house and car, references to payback for what was stolen. What do you think? The sheriff asked when she was done. I think Daniel has cheated someone again. Maybe he's repeating his old pattern. The sheriff frowned. Do you have any evidence? Not yet, but I'm looking. Megan stood up. Thanks, Sheriff. If I find anything concrete, I'll come right back. Megan, Carson called after her as she reached the door. Whatever happened 9 years ago, I'm glad you're back. Your father was my friend. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. The Hill House, evening. Megan returned to dinner. Emily was bustling about in the kitchen, and Daniel was working in his new study on the first floor. You're back. Emily looked both surprised and relieved. Honestly, I thought you weren't coming back. Where would I go? I don't have money for a hotel. Megan sat down at the table. And I want to see Lizzy when she gets back from camp. Emily tensed. About Lizzy. Daniel thinks you should take things slowly. She knows you're coming back, but what? She was very young when you left. Her memories are limited. Left? Megan felt anger boiling up inside her. I didn't leave, Emily. I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. I know, it's just easier to explain to a child, Emily said, placing a plate of lasagna on the table. She calls me Emily's mom, and Daniel thinks... I don't care what Daniel thinks, Megan snapped. Lizzy is my daughter, and I want to see her. The study door opened and Daniel appeared. Megan, we need to talk, he said in a businesslike tone. Alone. Emily nodded quickly and left the kitchen. Daniel sat down opposite Megan. I know you've been talking to Leonard, he began without preamble. Whatever he told you, remember, he has his own motives. And you don't? Megan crossed her arms over her chest. I made a mistake 9 years ago, and I let you pay for it. That's unforgivable. But you're looking for forgiveness? I'm looking for understanding. Daniel leaned closer. I never planned for you to serve your full sentence. The lawyers were working on an appeal, but the evidence conveniently disappeared. Megan finished for him. Like the evidence that was in the safe in our house? Daniel paled. Megan, those documents. Where are they, Daniel? He looked away. Destroyed. After your arrest, they came to search our house. I couldn't take the risk. Megan felt everything freeze inside her. Her last hope was shattered. Leonard said you were back to your old ways. A new investment fund, new victims. Leonard is a broken old man who blames me for his failures. Daniel shook his head. Yes, I have a new business. It's legal. I've learned from my past mistakes. Like Emily? Was she also a mistake you learned from? It didn't happen right away. Daniel's eyes softened. She helped with Lizzy, supported me. One thing led to another. And now you're a happy family. Megan stood up. You know what, Daniel? I don't believe a word you say. And I'm going to find out the truth. About the past and about your new legitimate business. She headed for the door, but Daniel caught her arm. Don't do anything stupid, Megan, for Lizzy's sake. Megan pulled her arm away. Everything I do is for Lizzy. It always has been and always will be. Old Pine Ridge Park, dawn. For 3 days, Megan wandered around town like a ghost. She recognized the places, but not the people. Too much had changed in 9 years. At dawn on the 4th day, she found refuge in a dilapidated playground in an old park where she used to walk with little Lizzy. I knew I'd find you here. Emily's voice interrupted her thoughts. Her younger sister looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She handed Megan a cup of coffee. Have you been watching me? I'm worried, Emily said, sitting down next to her on the bench. You haven't been sleeping at night. You've been wandering around town. The sheriff is starting to get concerned. Let him worry about Daniel. The 4th letter came yesterday, right? Megan took a sip of coffee. I saw the reinforcements arrive from the county center. Emily nodded. They installed a video surveillance system around the house. Daniel, he's scared. Really scared. Good, Megan replied coldly. Let him know what it's like to be afraid. I was afraid every day of the 3,287 days I spent in prison. Emily shuddered. I didn't know the whole story, Megan. I swear. Daniel told me you were an accomplice. And you believed him? I didn't want to believe it. But you admitted your guilt, signed a confession. And Daniel, he was so convincing. Megan looked at her sister with new eyes. He's been lying to you too, Emily, all these years. What are you talking about? That his new business is just as much of a scam as the last one. Only the victims are different. Emily shook her head. No, he's changed. I know Daniel did something terrible 9 years ago, but since then he's gotten better at lying, Megan said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Remember Martha from the library? She helped me find articles about Daniel from the last few years. His new fund is promising investors 18% annual returns. In today's economy, that's impossible without fraud. Emily looked closely at the article, her face slowly changing. I don't know anything about his business. He never tells me anything. Because he needs you as a cover. A respectable family. A loving wife. A happy stepdaughter. The perfect facade. They fell silent. The sun rose over the park, bathing the trees in golden light. Lizzy is coming back the day after tomorrow, Emily finally said. Daniel wants to send you to a motel for that time. He says she needs time to get used to the idea of you coming back. What do you think? I think she deserves to know the truth. The whole truth. Emily looked determined. Whatever happens between us, Megan, you're her mother. Thank you. Megan felt hope for the first time in a long time. And Emily, be careful with Daniel, especially now that someone is threatening him. Morgan's sawmill, noon. The sawmill was operating at half capacity. Leonard Morgan met Megan at the entrance to the small office, which smelled of wood chips and coffee. Found anything? He asked, closing the door. I'm not sure, Megan said, placing a folder on the table. Articles about Daniel's new fund. Same pattern, unrealistic promises, vague wording about investments. Leonard glanced through the materials. These aren't from our county. He's smart. He doesn't hunt in his own backyard. But why take the risk again? He has money. You said he transferred a large sum offshore. Daniel isn't addicted to money. He's addicted to the game, to power. Leonard sighed. But articles alone won't bring him down. We need proof, which he destroyed. Maybe. Leonard chewed his lip. Or maybe not. Daniel always takes precautions. I don't believe he completely got rid of documents that could protect him under certain circumstances. You think he lied to me? The documents from the safe could still be there? I think we should check his office, the new one, in the business center on the outskirts. The Hill House, evening. When she got home, Megan found Daniel in the living room. He was standing by the window, staring intently into the twilight. Looking for ghosts? She asked. Daniel flinched. Megan, don't sneak up on me like that. A habit from prison. It's better to move quietly there, she said, walking over to the armchair, not missing his nervousness. New letters? No, but... He fell silent, staring out the window. I feel like I'm being watched. The police haven't found anything, but I'm sure someone is watching the house. Paranoia. Another thing you get used to in prison. Daniel turned to her. Stop it, Megan. I understand you're hurt, but this is serious. Someone is threatening me. And you have no idea who? I've gone through the client list, checked every transaction. No leads. Megan studied his face. Daniel seemed genuinely frightened, but she knew his ability to manipulate too well. What about your new fund? None of your investors feel cheated? Daniel tensed. You talked to Leonard, and now you think I've started some kind of scheme. And you haven't? My new fund is completely legal. Yes, the returns are above average, but that's only because I found the right niche. Technical startups in the medical field, a specialization I've been studying for the last few years. While I was rotting in prison, Megan stood up. You know, I looked up information about your miracle fund, and I found something interesting. It's registered to a shell company, which in turn is registered to another one, a classic money laundering scheme. It's a standard corporate structure for reducing tax risks. Nothing illegal. Just like last time, right? Before it all fell apart? A tense silence hung in the air. Daniel looked at Megan. She looked at him. Two people who were once close, now strangers to each other. What do you want, Megan? Revenge? Money? Name your price. The truth and justice. For starters, I want to see Lizzy when she comes back, without your manipulation and preparation. It could traumatize her, more than the lie that her mother is a criminal. Daniel turned away. Fine, but I'll be present when you meet. No, just Lizzy and me. Emily can be there if Lizzy feels more comfortable. Megan, you're in no position to dictate terms. You're wrong, Megan said, her voice taking on a new strength. I'm not the woman you convinced to take the blame for your crimes anymore. I'm going to see my daughter. And if you try to stop me, I'll go to the sheriff with what I know about your new business. You don't have any proof. Not yet. Megan headed for the door. But I will find it. In the meantime, I'm moving into a motel. I'll be back when Lizzy arrives. Daniel grabbed her arm. Megan, don't be foolish. Times have changed. I've changed. So have I, she said, pulling her hand away. And believe me, Daniel, you don't want to find out how much. McIntyre Motel, late evening. Megan was unpacking her few belongings in her small room when there was a knock at the door. Megan, it's Rob. Rob Carson. The sheriff looked worried. Sorry for the late visit. I heard you moved here. News travels fast in Pine Ridge, she said, inviting him in. What's going on? A new letter arrived, not for Daniel, for me. The sheriff placed a sealed plastic envelope with a sheet of paper on the table. I want you to take a look. Megan put on the gloves the sheriff handed her and studied the letter. Same handwriting, same style, but the content was different. Sheriff Carson, you're protecting the wrong man. Daniel Hill is a criminal who has escaped justice and continues to deceive innocent people. Look into the MedTech Innovations Investment Fund. If you don't stop him, I will. Justice will be served in 3 days. In 3 days, Megan repeated. This isn't just a threat anymore. It's a countdown. I've put out an alert throughout the county. The sheriff rubbed his forehead. But without specifics, there's not much we can do. Daniel refuses to provide any documents related to the fund. He says it's a trade secret. And you can't get a warrant? The Federal Financial Commission has to initiate an investigation first. Bureaucracy, the sheriff sighed. Megan, if you know anything, I know Daniel is a con man. He made me rot in prison while he built a new life with my sister, and now he's probably cheating people again. But you don't have any proof. Megan thought for a moment. There might be a way to get it. Leonard Morgan thinks that old documents, ones that could prove Daniel's guilt, might be hidden in his new office. That's just a guess. But what if it's true? If we could check. Without a warrant, it's illegal. The sheriff looked at her sternly. Megan, I understand your desire to find the truth, but if you break the law, I can't protect you. I understand, Sheriff. Megan nodded. I'll follow the law, I promise. When the sheriff left, Megan dialed Leonard's number. We have 3 days, she said without preamble. Someone is going after Daniel, and if we want to find the evidence first, we need to act now. Daniel's office, late at night. This is definitely a bad idea, Leonard muttered as they parked outside the dark office building. Do you have a key? For the front door, yes. I consulted for one of the companies here. He showed her his access card, but not for his office. I took care of that, Megan said, pulling out a set of keys. Emily gave them to me. She's scared by the letters and is starting to realize who Daniel really is. They entered the empty building. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. 3rd floor, office 312, MedTech Innovations, an investment fund. No security? Megan whispered. Just cameras at the entrance and a patrol every 3 hours. We have an hour until the next one. The key fit. Inside was a standard office, a reception area, a conference room, and 3 offices. Look for a safe, Leonard said, heading for the office with a sign that read, D. Hill. He must have something like what was in your house. Megan examined the cabinets and walls while Leonard checked Daniel's computer. Anything? She asked after 20 minutes. Not yet. Everything is password protected. Leonard pointed to the wall behind Daniel's chair. But that painting looks suspicious. Megan walked over to the abstract painting, a mixture of gray and blue splashes, the kind of tasteless art Daniel loved. Carefully removing it, she discovered a safe built into the wall. A digital lock, she said, studying the panel. 4 digits. Birthday? Anniversary? Daniel never used personal dates for passwords. Too obvious, Megan mused. But he loved symbolism. 9 years ago, the code for the home safe was 1893. What did 1893 mean? The year Bank of America was founded, where he started his career. Megan shook her head. That won't help. Leonard thought for a moment. What about this company? MedTech Innovations? When was it founded? 2 years ago, but... Megan suddenly froze. Wait, his new scheme is an exact copy of the old one. What if... She typed in the same numbers. 1893. The lock clicked and opened. Unbelievable, Leonard whispered. Is he that confident? He's that predictable. Megan began to look through the contents of the safe. Folders with documents, flash drives, a small hard drive. And he keeps copies of everything, just like before. Leonard quickly scanned the documents. My God, Megan, it's all here. Money flow charts, lists of shell companies, and... He froze, staring at a folder labeled Project Redemption. What's in there? Megan peered over his shoulder and felt the ground slip away beneath her feet. The folder contained old documents. The very ones that, according to Daniel, had been destroyed. Proof of his guilt in the first fraud. And on the first page was a handwritten plan. 1. Megan takes the blame. Maximum sentence. 5 years with the possibility of parole after 3. 2. Transfer of fixed assets through offshore accounts to an account in Belize. 3. If necessary, compromising information on Morgan. Documents in the blue folder. 4. After Megan's release, full reintegration or elimination of risk, depending on her position. Eliminate the risk, Megan whispered. He never planned to restore our family. I was just part of the plan. Megan, this is everything we need to put him behind bars and clear your name, Leonard said, gathering the documents. We need to take this to the sheriff. Suddenly, they heard the front door open. The patrol? So early? Leonard paled. No. Megan peeked into the hallway and saw a familiar silhouette. It's Daniel. Daniel's office. Night. Hide, Leonard whispered, shoving the documents into his briefcase. I'll distract him. No. Megan clutched the flash drive with the backup copies in her hand. I'll take care of it. Daniel flipped the light switch. Light flooded the reception area. Who's there? His voice sounded tense. I have a gun. Megan came out of the office, leaving Leonard with the documents on the desk. It's me, she said calmly. We need to talk, Daniel. He lowered his hand, which was indeed holding a small gun. Megan? What are you doing here? How did you get in? Does that matter? What I found is more important, she said, approaching him and keeping her eyes on the gun. You said all the documents were destroyed. You lied. What are you talking about? He tried to get to his office, but Megan blocked his way. About Project Redemption. About your plan to frame me from the start. Daniel paled, then pulled himself together. You broke into my office in the middle of the night? That's a crime, Megan. I'm calling the sheriff. Go ahead. I was just on my way to see him with proof of your schemes, old and new. What do you want? Money? A piece of my business? The truth, and freedom for myself. Real freedom. Daniel lowered the gun. All right, let's talk this out. I'll explain everything. At that moment, the floor creaked, and Daniel spun around. Leonard was trying to slip out the door with the briefcase. Morgan? Daniel's face contorted. You two are in on this? Just restoring justice, Leonard replied, clutching the briefcase tighter. Give it to me. Daniel raised the gun again. Are you really going to shoot? Megan took a step toward him. Add murder to your list of crimes? I'm protecting my family, my business. Family? You mean my sister, who you married while I was in prison for your crime? A tense silence fell. Leonard slowly moved toward the door. Daniel shifted his gaze from him to Megan, clearly weighing his options. Listen, his voice softened. We can fix this, together. A fresh start. It's too late, Daniel. Megan shook her head. I saw the plan. Eliminate the risk. That's me, right? What were you going to do if I didn't fit into your plans after you got out? Daniel lowered his eyes. At that moment, Leonard lunged for the door. Daniel instinctively spun around and fired, the bullet lodging in the wooden doorframe. The next one's for you, he threatened. It won't. Sheriff Carson's voice rang out from the hallway. Put the gun down, Daniel. The sheriff stood in the doorway, pointing his service weapon at Daniel. Behind him, Emily stood pale and shaken. Emily? Daniel looked confused. What's going on? She called me, the sheriff explained. She said you took the gun and left in the middle of the night after receiving a message, and that Megan and Leonard might be in danger. Daniel slowly lowered his weapon. It's a misunderstanding. You shot a man, the sheriff approached and took the gun. And from what I've heard, you've got some serious problems unrelated to this incident. You're under arrest, Daniel Hill. Sheriff Carson's house, morning. The district attorney will be here tomorrow to review the case, the sheriff said, placing a cup of coffee in front of Megan. With the documents you found, Daniel has little chance of avoiding punishment. Megan nodded, looking out the window. The sheriff's house was located on a hill overlooking Pine Ridge, a toy town bathed in the rays of the rising sun. What about my case? Is there any chance of a review? With this evidence, undoubtedly. The lawyers are already working on it. Emily sat quietly in the corner of the sofa, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. What will happen now, to us? She looked up at her sister. The house, Lizzy. Lizzy is coming back today. Megan glanced at her watch. I have to be at the bus station at noon. I want to meet her myself. Are you sure? It might be difficult for her. That's exactly why I have to be there. Enough lies and manipulation. The sheriff received a message on his radio. Daniel is demanding a lawyer and refusing to talk. I need to go to the station. When he left, the sisters were left alone. I'm sorry, Emily said quietly. For everything. You're a victim of his manipulation too, Megan said, moving closer. Do you think you really loved him? Or were you just under his influence? Emily thought about it. At first it was gratitude. He knew how to seem caring and reliable. Then, I don't know. Maybe it was never real love. What about the letters? Do you know anything about them? No, I swear. Emily looked sincere. But I'm afraid the threat is real, especially now that Daniel is under arrest and his business is falling apart. Pine Ridge bus station, noon. Megan shifted nervously from foot to foot, watching the arriving bus. Sheriff Carson stood nearby, offering moral support and ready to intervene if necessary. Does she know I'm meeting her? Megan asked. Emily called her this morning. She explained the situation as best she could to a teenager. The bus stopped and passengers began to get off. The last to emerge was a tall girl with dark hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a plaid shirt. She was carrying a worn backpack and looked around uncertainly. Lizzy? Megan barely recognized the 7-year-old girl from her memories in this almost adult 16-year-old girl. Their eyes met. Lizzy froze, then slowly approached. Hi, she said quietly. Are you my real mom? Megan nodded, not trusting her voice. I was told you were a criminal, that you stole money and that's why you were taken away. That's not true. Megan sighed deeply. I took the blame for a crime your father committed, to protect you. Why should I believe you? Because now there's proof. Your father has been arrested. The truth has finally come out. Lizzy looked at the sheriff. Is that true? Yes, sweetheart. Carson nodded. Your mother is innocent, and soon it will be proven officially. Lizzy stared at Megan for a long time, as if searching her face for something familiar. I have your photos, she finally said. Emily's mom gave them to me. I sometimes looked at them and thought about you. I thought about you every day. Megan took a step forward. Every minute. They stood so close, but between them lay a 9-year gulf. Lizzy hesitantly raised her hand and touched Megan's face. We have the same eyes, she whispered. Dad always got angry when I mentioned it. Megan gently hugged her daughter, expecting her to pull away. But after a moment's hesitation, Lizzy hugged her back. The Hill House, evening. These letters are bothering me. Sheriff Carson paced the living room. Especially the last one with the specific threat. Daniel's in jail, but the sender may not know that and still do something. Have you increased patrols? Megan asked. She was sitting next to Lizzy. They had spent the whole day together, slowly getting to know each other again. All over town, and around that house in particular. What about the sender? Any leads? The letters were sent from different locations. No fingerprints or DNA. Professional work. Or the work of someone who knows police procedures, Leonard said thoughtfully from the corner. What about Daniel's investors? Any ex-cops or military personnel? We're looking into it, but the client list is long and many used corporate entities. Emily brought in a tray of tea. I looked through the documents Daniel kept at home. I found mention of an investor who put in a large sum 6 months ago and recently demanded his money back, a Thomas White. That name sounds familiar. The sheriff frowned. I'll run it through the database. No need, Leonard straightened up. Thomas White is a former federal agent. He consulted for the sawmill on security issues a couple of years ago. Tough guy, no sense of humor. And skilled at sending anonymous letters and conducting surveillance, the sheriff concluded. We need to find him right away. A motel on the outskirts of Pine Ridge, late evening. Thomas White checked in 3 weeks ago, the clerk said, nervously flipping through the registration book. He paid cash for a month in advance. Is he here now? The sheriff asked, putting his hand on his holster. He left about an hour ago, said he had a meeting. The sheriff exchanged glances with his deputy. Cordon off the room. No one goes in until we get a warrant. What now? Asked Megan, who had insisted on participating in the operation. We're going back to your place. If White knows about Daniel's arrest, he may have changed his target. You're all potentially in danger. The Hill House, night. No sign of White, the sheriff reported when he returned from his rounds. 2 patrols are on duty outside. I think you're safe in the house. Megan nodded, looking at Lizzy sleeping on the couch. It had been an emotionally difficult day for everyone. especially for the girl whose world had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. "I'll spend the night with her," Emily said quietly. "She's used to having me around." "Of course," Megan stroked her daughter's hair. "And we'll have breakfast together in the morning." The sheriff headed for the door. "I'll be back at dawn. Keep the windows and doors locked." When he left, silence fell over the house. Leonard settled into the guest room, Emily and Lizzy in the girls' bedroom. Megan stayed in the kitchen, sorting through the documents she had found in Daniel's office. Around midnight, she heard a creak on the back porch. Megan froze, peering into the darkness outside the window. Not a shadow, not a movement. The patrol car should have been outside, but no headlights were visible through the trees. She quietly walked into the hall and checked the lock on the front door. It was locked. Then she went to the back door leading to the garden. It was locked too. Exhaling, Megan returned to the kitchen and froze. A man was sitting at the table, about 60 years old, with a military bearing and a steely gaze. He was holding a pistol with a silencer in his hand. "Good evening, Mrs. Hill," he said quietly. "My name is Thomas White. We need to talk." "About the letters?" Megan slowly raised her hands. "Did you threaten Daniel?" "I didn't threaten him. I warned him." White pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit down." Megan sat down cautiously. "The sheriff knows about you. He'll be here soon." "The patrolmen are asleep in their cars, harmless sleeping pills in their coffee," White said calmly, businesslike. "We have time." "What do you want?" "Justice, just like you." He placed the folder on the table. "Daniel Hill has deceived many people, including me. I invested my retirement savings and money set aside for my wife's medical treatment. She has stage 4 cancer." "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize for him." White opened the folder. "When I realized I'd been cheated, I started my own investigation, and I discovered that you're a victim too, perhaps the biggest one." "That's why you sent the letters? To scare him?" "To make him slip up. A cornered animal always makes mistakes." White closed the folder. "And he did. Now the authorities have proof of his crimes. So you got what you wanted. Why are you here?" White paused, looking at Megan with a strange expression. "Because justice doesn't always work, Mrs. Hill. Daniel could make a deal with the prosecutor. He could avoid serious punishment. Again." "What are you suggesting?" Megan tensed. "A final solution." White raised his gun. "Daniel doesn't deserve to live after what he's done. You're going to kill him? He's in prison. It complicates things, but it doesn't make it impossible." Megan shook her head. "That's not justice, that's revenge. Don't you want revenge after everything he did?" "I did, but now..." Megan sighed. "I want to move on, to be with my daughter, to clear my name." White studied her face. "You're stronger than I thought." At that moment, the kitchen door opened quietly and Leonard entered. Seeing White, he froze. "Mr. Morgan, join us." White pointed the gun at a chair. "Thomas." Leonard slowly approached. "You shouldn't do this. I have to, for Martha and for everyone else." "Martha?" Megan looked from one to the other. "My wife," White explained. "She died 2 weeks ago. She didn't live to see the treatment I was saving up for." "I'm so sorry," Megan said sincerely. "Thomas, violence won't fix anything," Leonard said, carefully sitting down next to Megan. "Daniel will answer to the law. Like last time," White sneered bitterly. "When he framed his wife and got off scot-free. This time it's different. We have proof. Lots of proof." White hesitated. At that moment, footsteps sounded on the stairs. "Mom? Megan?" Lizzy's sleepy voice called out. White tensed, raising his gun. "No!" Megan jumped between him and the door. "She's my daughter. She didn't do anything wrong." The rest happened in slow motion. Lizzy entered the kitchen. White saw the girl and lowered his gun. Leonard rushed between them. There was a loud bang. Leonard grabbed his stomach and slowly sank to the floor. White stared at his hands in horror, unable to believe he had pulled the trigger. "Oh God, no," he whispered. Megan rushed to Leonard, pressing on the wound. "Lizzy, call 911, quick!" The girl froze in shock, but after a second she rushed to the phone. "I didn't mean to." White backed away toward the door. "I never... Help me!" Megan pressed a kitchen towel against Leonard's wound, quickly soaking with blood. He's dying! White approached, knelt down, and helped Megan stop the bleeding. I know first aid. Let's do this together. 10 minutes that seemed like an eternity passed before the ambulance arrived. Sheriff Carson followed, awakened by the dispatcher's call. Good God. He burst into the kitchen, his gun drawn. It's my fault. White raised his hands, stained with Leonard's blood. I give up. Pine Ridge Hospital, 3 days later, the hospital corridor was silent. Megan sat near the intensive care unit, clutching a plastic cup of long cold coffee. Mom? Lizzy sat down next to her. The words still sounded awkward, but she tried. No news. Megan smiled weakly. The doctors say the next 24 hours will be critical. After the operation, Leonard remained in critical condition. The bullet had grazed an artery, and he had lost a lot of blood. Sheriff Carson appeared, looking exhausted but determined. The district attorney has made his decision, he said, sitting down across from Megan. Daniel will get the maximum sentence. There's too much evidence, and this time, no legal tricks will help. What about my case? It will be reviewed on an expedited basis. With the new evidence, your conviction will be overturned, Megan. What about Thomas White? The sheriff sighed. He's cooperating fully. He told us about his wife's murder, the missing money, and his investigation. If Leonard survives, perhaps the charges will be reduced. Leonard's room. Evening. Leonard opened his eyes. Pale and hooked up to machines, he looked much older than his years. Decided to wake up at last? Megan squeezed his hand. Not so easy to get rid of me, he said, each word coming with difficulty. The doctors say you're on the mend. You're lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it, Leonard whispered. I survived because I had to. See justice done. For you. It's done. Megan showed him the newspaper article. Daniel has been found guilty. My case will be reviewed. Leonard smiled weakly. 9 years. Too long to wait for the truth. But it was worth the wait. County Court, 2 weeks later. All those involved in the drama gathered in the small courtroom. Megan, Lizzy, and Emily were in the front row. Sheriff Carson was slightly behind them. Leonard was in a wheelchair, still weak but insisting on being there. Daniel Hill, in handcuffs and a prison uniform, looked broken. Next to him was an emaciated Thomas White, awaiting his sentence. In view of the evidence presented, the judge adjusted his glasses. The court finds the following. Daniel Hill is found guilty of grand fraud, document forgery, and obstruction of justice. He is sentenced to 25 years in prison without the right to parole for the first 15 years. Daniel lowered his head. No reaction, as if he had expected it. Thomas White is found guilty of unlawful entry, threats, and unintentional grievous bodily harm. Taking into account mitigating circumstances and cooperation with the investigation, he is sentenced to 5 years imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 2 years. The judge paused. And finally, the case of Megan Hill. Based on newly discovered circumstances and evidence of innocence, the verdict is overturned in its entirety. The conviction is expunged. The state offers its official apology for the miscarriage of justice. The Hill home that evening. What now? Emily was setting the table for a modest dinner. They had decided to celebrate the restoration of justice with a quiet family evening. I've been offered compensation, Megan said, helping to set the table, for the wrongful conviction. So now you're free and rich? Emily tried to joke. Money won't bring back the 9 years I lost. Megan looked at Lizzy, who was helping Leonard get settled at the table. But it can help us start over. Us? You, me, Lizzy. This house belongs to both of us, Emily. I'm not going to kick you out. After everything I did, you're a victim too. And more importantly, you took care of my daughter when I wasn't there. Megan squeezed her sister's hand. Family is all we have left. Pine Ridge Cemetery, 1 month later, Megan placed flowers on the fresh grave. Thomas White didn't live to see his sentence. His heart gave out in the holding cell. It's strange to mourn someone who almost killed your friend, she said to Leonard, who was standing nearby, leaning on his cane. He was a victim, just like us, Leonard replied. He just chose the wrong path to justice. And we chose the right one? We chose life, Megan, Leonard said. looking at Lizzy and Emily waiting for them by the car. Despite everything that happened. Epilogue. 1 year later, the house on Cedar Street was transformed. New paint, different colors, new life. In the yard, Megan and Lizzy worked together in the garden, restoring the neglected flower beds. The letter from college arrived, Emily said, coming out onto the porch with an envelope. Lizzy jumped up, wiping her dirty hands on her jeans, and opened the envelope. Her joyful cry said it all. "I got in, with a full scholarship." Megan hugged her daughter, unable to hold back her tears. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, and I am proud." A car pulled up and Leonard got out, almost fully recovered from his injuries. "I got the news," he said, waving a newspaper. "The Federal Commission arrested Daniel's last accomplices. All the investors' money will be returned."